Hello, everyone. Welcome to our regular core protocol sync. Today we have updates from the previous week and plans for the future from the whole core protocol development team. And that is the first one today on my screen.
Okay. Yeah, let me. Okay. Hey, everyone. Last week on the protocol side, we finished up the palette feeds integration into the runtime, and we are working on the relayer side right now to get that connected. Apart from that, there were a few minor changes. Let me just quickly share my screen. Give me a second. This one is a super small one. We were actually taking the authority list from the from the argument itself when extrinsic was passed in when we are initializing a particular chain. But we realized that the authority list is already part of the header that we are sending in. So Surge could avoid a lot of decoding on the relay side and could just directly push out the headers. So we made that change on Friday, and that is in. Apart from that, nothing else on my side. Uh, Coming on to this week, I just started spinning up nodes locally, both the previous snapshot and the latest snapshot. I want to test out the runtime upgrades to that, and then I'm writing down the notes so that if anyone's curious into running their own upgrades locally, you could use that notes to maybe do it on yourself as well. Get used to it. Uh, that's my main focus. Uh, Post that, if everything goes well, if we don't need to do any, if we don't introduce any breaking changes and if it's a focus upgrade, then I would like to focus on the next one. German, I'm thinking Ethereum verification, but if there is anything else, like I would be happy to discuss that one as well. But that's all from my end.
Sorry, Ved, I missed the question. Are you saying you're ready to start working on the Ethereum integration? You've got everything ready for forkless runtime upgrades?
No, not yet. I'll most likely be done by tomorrow. And like if everything works, like and if we haven't introduced any breaking changes, then I think my Thursday or Friday would be mostly free. So I want to tackle something that's up and coming that we haven't discussed. So maybe we can, if you have any idea, then we can discuss about them and then get going on that end as well. If everything goes smooth on this end.
So you'll be ready by Thursday or Friday to deploy a forkless runtime upgrade for feeds validation?
Yeah, at least on the local end, like at least on the local.
Okay.
Locally, I can
Yeah, that's
validate that, and I can give out the notes so that you guys can validate it on your end as well.
yeah, that's going to be the priority. So after we deploy our first forkless runtime upgrade, then we can move on to Ethereum or some other topic.
Okay, cool, fantastic. Yeah.
Actually, and can you actually walk us through kind of what your thoughts are? I saw that you had started to put together a Notion document on that. Can you give us an overview of that, please?
Give me 1 second. Yeah, let me just quickly open that. Guys, I'm logged out of Notion.
But we are talking about upgrade on the farmnet, not testnet, right?
Yeah.
Originally, we were talking about doing the first upgrade on the testnet, but we can do it on the farmnet. I mean, I'm open to either. Doesn't really make a difference to me. Whatever you think makes sense, Nizar.
I think farmnet because we are not using feeds there.
Okay.
The up-to-date testnet that we have is way older and it will break. The newer is still syncing, and it will make the relay incompatible. So we need to update relay kind of in sync with this process, which is why I think farmnet.
So we are not pushing any blocks on the farmnet at the moment, so we can. Okay, makes sense.
We are not pushing any data, yeah.
I can start with farmnet.
On the farmnet, we kind of need it for some of the upgrades of the node that we want to do, so that will be helpful.
Okay. Yes, here you go.
Yeah, and whenever we do, as we get closer to that, like when we have a specific date, we need to actually, this is kind of a symbolic moment, like the first forkless runtime upgrade on the network. So we need to coordinate with Way to make sure that there's like a nice post in the Discord about it so that our users are notified too.
This is something that we started with, like a small upgrade process, like what we are looking at. If anyone hasn't had a chance to look at it, it's already in the Notion under release processes. But the idea is pretty straightforward when it comes to doing a forklift upgrades. We have a system palette as part of the runtime that takes in a WASM blob, and then as soon as the WASM blob in this X block gets updated, the X plus 1 block will start to use the latest runtime that was deployed in the previous block. The steps that involves in actually doing it depends on how, which kind of testnet or how we have set up our security or how we have set up our release process. The call is pretty straightforward, but the origin the call expects is ideally supposed to be root. So there are two ways of sending out that origin. One is directly using sudo and kill it all in one shot and then like gets upgraded, or the other one is go through the democracy route. Now here, let me first go through the sudo route. Sudo route, there's again two more options there. The first one would be a single account, a single person holding a single account, and you just need behind a single private key. So if that's compromised, the sudo is pretty much compromised. Uh, the second one would be using a multisig. Substrate do have a very well used multisig palette that we can pretty much rely on that gives out a multisig address whenever we initiate a multisig. We could use that as a sudo account, and whenever we need to do an upgrade, we go with initializing a multisig, every signer signs it, and then the multisig executes the upgrade. So that would be under sudo. Uh, Apart from sudo, the next route is a very democracy route because the democracy is a palette that actually provides an origin route apart from sudo. The democracy route is a bit more lengthier in that sense. So you first propose an upgrade which appears as part of the democracy proposals. If you are using Polka.js, that's pretty much, if you go under democracy and you click on democracy, you see all the referendums. That's where your proposal comes into first. So once the proposal is put up, you will have a defined amount of time to second it. Everyone in the network who has credits can second it. If once the time has passed, the seconded proposal, the highest seconded proposal, if there are multiple, will be picked into a referendum. The referendum is the one that you actually vote on. A proposal is just something that you want. That's an extrinsic that you want to publish into the network. So referendum would be a wrapper on top of proposal that collects votes from everyone in the network. You will have a predefined amount of time there as well. Once the time has gone, it will tally the votes. And if it's an yes, then we move that referendum into an activation stage where it waits again another set of predefined amount of time for it to be scheduled to be executed. Now, once that particular scheduled time has gone, the proposal gets executed automatically in the network. If at any point in time the proposal was not seconded enough, or if the proposal was rejected by the community, then it never gets executed, and then whoever has proposed it will potentially lose some deposit that they would have put in when proposing that particular proposal in the first place. This is mostly used to control the spam that you might get, especially people who holds at least a minimum amount of credit, and they ended up like spamming the network with random awesome blobs just to see how it is. But this will potentially at least put a bit of control over that spam. Now, this is the longest route. There is another shortest route in this as well. That's through democracy with council. A council, in that sense, is basically a set of.
Hey, Vet. Sorry to interrupt you. It's going to be a while till we implement anything with governance, and it's probably going to be different from the way that Substrate does it by default or Polkadot. So it's probably not worth going into the nitty gritty of the way it works in Polkadot right now. So just to set expectations. So For the version 1 this week, it will be sudo with a single account. So we're going to go with the simplest way of doing this to start, just to make sure that it works. In the near term, we will upgrade to a multi-sig, and probably closer to mainnet launch, or maybe even shortly after mainnet launch, we will start to implement some governance into this, like progressively get to more community governance. But that's still a bit further out on the roadmap.
Yeah, totally. Like, I'm like, this is just to give like overall like what could be possible. But yeah, moving on a little. What I plan to do right now is what Jeremiah mentioned. Like, start with something super simple, like straightforward, a sudo with a single account, single sudo account, and then do a runtime upgrade and ensure that the block production continues post the runtime upgrade without any hiccups, and the nodes are not kicked out. When I say nodes, the older nodes which are running the older client, as well as the newer nodes which are running the newer client, both of them should be producing blocks and listening on the network and continuing as is. So that's my goal in the next 1 or 2 days, to get that up and running and write down the notes that I've noticed, and maybe share it across with the team, and you guys can try it out as well if you're curious enough. Any questions?
Makes sense.
Okay, makes sense to
Thanks,
me as well. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Ivan, what would you share?
Yeah, sure. Give me a minute to share a screen. Here it is. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
So yesterday we discussed the issue related to the slow syncing in the Windows. So I dig into that a bit. So my first hypothesis was, as I mentioned here, like the messaging logs, which mentioned that the multi-threader server is not available on Windows. So I dig into that, and the issue was in the parity tag library related to the JSON RPC. Yeah, I fixed the issue yesterday. Yeah, I received the one of the approves today. So the main issue was that there was a hack related to the Windows, because the basically ports were not given away to the operating system. I mean, the socket basically was not given away to the operating system before the release of Tokyo 1.0. So yeah, I just fixed this issue yesterday. Yeah, I will test I'll patch this version of the JSON RPC today for the node and check the syncing speed. So yeah, I didn't test it well. So I just tested the library. Yeah, it works totally fine. It's now multi-threaded. So as for the last week and this week,
quick
yeah,
comment on that, Ivan. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Thank you for fixing that, resolving that so quickly. So now the priority is going to be to get this rolled up into the desktop farmer and get a new release of the desktop farmer out as soon as possible. That resolves this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but yeah, I just need to check that the sync process is faster right now than it was before. Yeah, Sam.
Okay. Because I think this issue is different from the desktop farmer. This issue is not really the one that surfaced on the desktop farmer right now. The desktop farmer issue is to do with the RPC stuff. It's to do with a different ticket. This one fixes the node.
Both.
Okay, guys, I think there is a confusion. So first of all, there is a ticket that on Windows, the sync process is slow.
Yes.
Sync process is not done over RPC. Yeah. That was just one clue that potentially might affect it, but not necessarily affected. That's why this is kind of fixed, but we need to verify whether it's actually helped, because it may have not. And then if the sync is slow, it will reflect in the slow process in the desktop application as well. But that's like a consequence of the issue in the node itself.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that this fix, it's the binary, not the test. So it needs to go into the binary and not the Windows desktop application.
Absolutely.
They share the same code base.
Yeah,
We've got to get it into the binary first, then we've got to get it rolled up into the, it's like a multi-step process, but the place where it's mainly presenting itself is users on Windows that are downloading the desktop farmer and showing the screenshot showing like it's taking forever to sync. It's taking like 12 hours or 2 days to sync. That's where we're seeing the most issues in the user base right now.
No, but if Ivan has to test this, it's not about, before it gets into the desktop farmer, you need to test it on a Windows binary. Or would he have to would he have to also roll it into the desktop farmer to test it before he kicks it up?
I guess no, it will be for sure like be working on the Subspace farmer GUI. So yeah, it should be fine. They share the same code base overall. Like you just need to upgrade the Git revision in the Subspace farmer. So yeah, that was the issue related to the sync. Yeah, I just need to check once more whether sync is really fast or not. So apart from that, I was working on finalizing the multi-replica support. We finally finalized it last week, thanks to Nazar. So yeah, I guess I went through that PR like last week. Yeah, nothing changed very seriously. There's just a new abstraction, which is called multi-farming. Yeah, it basically, yeah. Let me unify this thing. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So basically, we have the abstraction which is called multi-farming, which basically is a container for like plots, farmings, and plottings. And for each plot, it spawns farming and plotting. Yeah, it's basically it will be used in future in order to abstract the logic of multi-farming itself. So that all of these pieces will be orthogonal to each other and will be reused. Yeah, in the multi-farming. So yeah, nothing much to show more here compared to last week. So yeah, today I also pushed a new PR related to the block archiving about which I also talked yesterday. It's actually a second take on the second problem on this problem. Yeah, yeah, we discussed a bit with Nazar here in VPR, and the point is that the API here looked a bit ugly. Yeah, and today I managed to hide the complexity away behind this multi-farming abstraction. So this is how it works. Like on the high level, it just adds new abstraction archiving to the multi-farming. Yeah, and this archiving, it actually asks for some info about plot, where like what is the hash of what is the last root block of the plot, and whether like the plot is empty or not. So yeah, and it also hides the logic of like querying for the best block number from the node in itself. So and after that, if we want to stop the farming process, we just drop this archiving abstraction. So this is what also changed in tests. So beforehand, we just dropped the plotting itself rather for that. So apart from it, I just moved a bunch of code from the plotting into this archiving abstraction. Yeah, and in the plotting right now, only the plot process is happening. Yeah, and also there is happening an update of the global object mapping. Yeah, it will be also moved into the like separate task thread or abstraction in the like following PRs. It shouldn't be also shared between it should be shared between multiple replicas, as we have like one global object mapping, which is which doesn't contain any specific information related to the plot, some specific plot itself. So we just share this kind of database, and we can move it to the multi-farming abstraction. So yeah, and apart from that, yeah, I did some docs for the farmer. Yeah, I received the feedback from Nazar. Yeah, after finalizing this issue, I will fix the docs. The issue with docs right now is that they're basically a transcript of the algorithms which are used in the in some specific modules. So yeah, and they're just reused from the RS files and included into them from the MD files. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Ivan, what are the next steps right now for multi-replica farming, or is it complete once all these are merged?
Yeah, it should be complete. Yeah. So the thing is, with this PR, once it's merged, I will open yet another PR for the global object mapping. Yeah, it shouldn't be, it shouldn't take much time. Yeah, and after that, it will be solved. Yeah.
Okay, Nizar, can you? I guess I'm just trying to understand in terms of the big picture roadmap. Is there anything else that we need to do on the farming side after this that you have in mind? Like, or I guess, what do you see as the next steps after this in terms of like the long-term roadmap for distributed farming and for the farmer?
So one of the next steps I'll share later will be to remove the archiving in general and replace it with pieces coming from the node. And I'll share later. We have several steps towards upgrades.
Okay.
That Ivan will be involved in.
Okay. But at least what we need for the test net, for the incentivized test net, for people to be able to select their own plot size,
for plot
not
size, they should be
supported.
sufficient. They should be sufficient.
Okay. Awesome. Great work, Ivan.
Okay, without further questions, Ozgan, what's happening on your side?
I am closely following what Ivan is changing in the protocol. I reviewed his PRs and also made a small additions to the docs. And that's all from me on the protocol side.
Okay, do you plan to integrate in progress version into desktop to see how it works?
Yes, I am, but has the runtime problem solved? Like when I built the monorepo, it was creating the error for max plot size is not defined.
Yeah, so you can actually try to work around that by building a new chain spec locally and using like local testnet with a new chain spec which has that stuff. So you can actually test like end-to-end how it will work in the future once we do runtime upgrade on the actual network.
Great. Okay. I can work on that. If I have any problems on that, can we think later about this?
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay, so so we can't deploy partial replica. Are we talking about the partial replica PR?
It's
or
about multi-replica, I think.
Partial replica is merged. This one is for multi-replica.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we can't have multi-replica deployed into the desktop app until we have done a forkless runtime upgrade of the farmnet.
As far as I know.
We can hack the client to actually allow that, but we would rather actually go through the runtime upgrade.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the approach. We probably don't want to hack it. We probably just want to do the runtime upgrade. So, Ved, is that going to be included in the runtime upgrade that you have planned for later this week?
Can you repeat that, Jeremiah? Which one would be included? So,
the issue that we're talking about here with the
I
the
can
farmer?
answer. I think yes. We'll be using the latest one as of the date when we do upgrade.
Okay. Well, we need to do so after Ivan merges the remaining issues for multi-replica farming.
We can use today's already. It already has all the stuff necessary.
Okay, but after he completely finishes multi-replica, this version of it, will that require another forkless runtime upgrade, or will that just be regular?
Compatible.
Okay, great.
But I will do one more local testing just to be sure once PR isn't just see something's up.
Of course.
But yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like probably by Thursday, we should be able to deploy a forkless runtime upgrade, which will unblock the ability to deploy multi-replica farming to the desktop app, do another release of that, and then users can and then users on the testnet will be able to select their plot size. Is that fair? By this weekend, roughly?
They should be able to select block size already. The two challenges remaining is one, the size of the node is actually growing all the time. So you can like cap it at 20 gigabytes for now, but in practice it will be growing. Like if they keep it running for like half a year, it will run over that. And the other one is we don't have multi-replica on the current version, but we can have partial replica. So like if you specify 50 gigabytes, it will not go over, but it may not be able to saturate it either. So like that's why we need multi-replica.
On the current version of the desktop app, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, but won't that be? I guess that's what I was saying. In the if we can have that code integrated into the desktop app by the end of the week,
then we can have multi-replica and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But what I also heard is that we're not pruning the plot, so that the plot will just continue to grow. Is that?
No, right now it's already supported to limit the plot size, like on the current desktop.
Okay, but sorry, I didn't understand the problem you said. There was some issue that we still have.
The node will be growing.
Oh, you mean the archival history of the node?
Yeah.
Oh, but that's what you're working on separately.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So nothing related to the farmer itself. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Oskin, realistically, right now, like if Ivan has his changes deployed by Wednesday, how long do you think it will take you after that to have that rolled up into the desktop farmer?
Realistically, I believe it will require some changes to UI, but not significant. So I would say 4 or 5 days.
Okay.
At
Can
most.
you deploy your changes in such a way that, or implement your changes in such a way that you implement all of the API in Tori first, and leave the user interface to later, so that when we start the audit with SR Labs on Monday, that they have which they're only auditing the Rust backend, that we at least have multi-replica, the ability to support multi-replica implemented on the backend, even though it's not going to be exposed to the user interface yet.
Yeah, actually my plan is like after the thing Nazar explained, like I can hack the client myself and do the experiments on the backend. My plan is to finish these backend changes till Monday. Like probably Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday will be enough for that.
Awesome. Okay, so probably realistically, it won't be until a week, maybe the following weekend, that we'll actually have the multi-replica farming supported in the user interface, in the graphical user interface.
Yeah, including all the PRs merged and releases and the announcements. Yeah, probably around that time.
Okay.
Okay, makes sense. Lucian?
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we see.
Okay, so last week I first make this like a small raster tool for the regenesis purpose. I also create a doc like about the usage and the basic idea, like how this tool works. The core idea is like, the blockchain is a key value database. To export like some state of this database is actually like to fetch all the entries on the one or a few like storage items in the subject context. So the usage is pretty simple. like we can use this tool to export like the state view that is necessary for the like new network to a JSON file, like for example, and then we can integrate this like JSON file into our transpect of the new network. One problem is that this like transpect might become bloated, like if you have like too many like for example, you have millions of like accounts in the balances palette. If we do, like we'll have millions of users in our network, and we need to like export these states. We eventually might don't have to like initial these balances states in the Genesis block or in the transpect. We can like try another way. For example, we can like once we launch the new network, we can transfer the balances to those accounts, like to use like some automation tools, like we can use some scripts to transfer those balances to these accounts. Yeah. Questions about this?
Okay, so if I understand correctly, we actually literally like hard code the balances into the chain spec.
Yes.
Okay. So if we
we
had a
can
million
use-
users, that'd be like 32 megabytes or 64 megabyte, something in that order of chain spec.
I have did an experiment, like if we have 100K accounts, the chain spec is about 35 megabytes.
Is that the raw spec, Krishna?
No, you know the current testnet.
Oh, I mean, like, is that the raw spec, or is it just the regular readable chain spec?
The raw chain spec you distribute to the public environment. The raw chain spec.
Yeah, I think we can transform those JSON entries into binary and make it like more compact. But the fact is, the binary will get bigger anyway.
I would say, you know, it's just the currently the typical way to, you know, initialize some states in the Genesis block in Subspace.
Okay, I think this is probably going to be fine for like the first regenesis that we do. You know, the first time we have to do a hard fork on the testnet. But I think long term we are probably going to need to figure out, like we do need to support something on the order of 1 million plus accounts whenever we do regenesis from incentivized testnet to mainnet.
Okay, if we do have 1 million, millions of accounts, we can just like transfer to them, like use some scripts once the network was launched. You know, use this approach for their mainnet launch.
Okay, ideally we'd like it to be able to work in some way where, I don't know, users could replicate it themselves. Like it didn't have to have like a script, but it was something which was like more native to the blockchain. Or maybe
well, if we
like
have a million accounts and we want to include that in the chain spec, we need to include million times like 32 bytes for the address and however many bytes for the value of the balance. Just no way around it if you want to include it like in the build, so to speak.
Well, sure. I guess what I was getting at is like something that, you know, maybe we use the object store, or like we have some like transaction, like some set of transactions that Subspace Labs can deploy that like, you know, instantiates or initializes all these accounts with certain balances, like something more like that than, I don't know, than just like some script that we run. But just something to think about for later. It's not it's not an urgent issue right now. We got time.
Okay. I think it's like this is like sufficient for the near future, I would say.
Awesome. Do we have any anything in mind, Nizar, or anyone on the team, I guess, when the first time that we can actually test this out is, or some new snapshot or something we need to deploy that's going to require this to be used in the near future?
I think you can test it like even locally and make sure it works, but
Yes.
we don't have to force people to like start from scratch unless we really have to. I don't see like a breaking change in the nearest future. It seems like our consensus is stable enough until we have like sharding and other stuff that will require breaking changes. For now, it seems to be okay.
What about when we deploy decoupled execution with like one executor?
I don't think it's related to the decoupled execution. This like regenesis is just to like initialize the balances palette in for the like primary chain.
Well, I guess, sorry, let me rephrase. Like after we launch incentivized testnet and we have balances which we need to carry forward, and if we then deploy decoupled execution, will that be a break? Like, and let's say that we move the balances from the farmer, from the primary chain to the secondary chain, as an example.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Then we would have to literally move everything.
Yeah.
But that will be like something more complex than described here. That will be a very unusual thing for Substrate.
Yeah.
We need to like think more for their problem.
Okay. I mean, that will probably be happening in the next like 2 months, something like that.
Okay.
But I think this is good. Like this is all we just, like Nazar said, we just need to test this before incentivized testnet launch and get verification that we have a workable process, and then we've got it in our back pocket in case we need it.
Sure. Yeah. No problem.
Awesome. Thank you, Licheng.
Okay, so apart from this small tool, last week I was working on a few issues and submit to PR for the bug fixes. One is this the Polkadot.js is broken for the executor due to some recent commit. The symptom is that the metadata runtime API call panics, and the root cause is that the raw identifier is unsupported by the scale info create. And I also report the problem to this create, and they have proposed a PR to fix it. Okay. Another one. Okay. Another one is like the executor chain will miss some primary blocks in some cases. The first one is that previously we use the imported block notification stream from the blockchain events, which will not notify the imported blocks during the initial sync or the major sync. So we'll miss the blocks in that case. The solution is to switch to the imported blocks notification from our subspace consensus. Yeah, that will fix this problem. It will notify each primary block whenever you no matter the stage of the subspace node. Another problem is that the collation generation, like the subsystem initialization and the imported block notification stream happen concurrently. So there will dozens of blocks like will be ignored before the initialization of this subsystem is complete. So that is typically about like 20 blocks. So we just need to like note those blocks like notified before the subsystem initialization is done. There's still some like a risky like pitfall around this mentioned by Nazar. I think we'll like solve it in my next PR maybe. But we are already like aware of this problem. Yeah, that's everything in the last week. Any questions, comments?
Okay, this makes sense. So the next step will be to integrate the executor, right?
Yeah. So the next step is to like integrate this executor to the subspace node. Yeah.
And you also need to set up the single trusted executor, or is that part of what you're describing already?
After I integrate the executor into the subspace node, I'll work on the trusted executor.
Okay. So we've got a couple bugs here. You've got to do the integration, then you've got to do the Big Brother executor. What are you thinking right now in terms of a timeline before we can deploy Big Brother to our testnet?
So you would like to deploy the executor against the current testnet?
Yeah, we'd like to demonstrate that this works in a production setting, or I mean, in a real network with real users. That's sort of the next step in terms of this, the benching or the verification of this.
Okay, so probably after this week we can have everything like available for this goal.
Okay, so that's the next major milestone. Once we have that working, then we can start dealing with these security issues that are implementation, unhappy paths of like this equivocation and whatnot that we need to sort out, and then that will unblock the ability to have other people participate outside of Big Brother in execution. We had a call with David yesterday, and we talked about some of the semantics of verification that we have in around some of these security issues. And I have some new ideas. I think some of the bugs some of these unhappy paths that we're trying to work through, we actually might not need to. We might be able to simplify some of these, not necessarily the equivocation, but some of these transaction spamming attacks. So what I'd like you to do, Li Cheng, is if you can set up a meeting with Yumi and Nazar after we get Big Brother deployed and we're ready to start working on the next phase of this. If you can set up a meeting, I think we need to have a design discussion around this to kind of go through these edge cases and review them one more time. I think we can actually simplify it a little bit.
Sure, of course. So after we
can you add me to that meeting so I can listen in?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And Sam as well, please, for sure.
Yeah, of course. So that will be
end of next week.
Optimistically.
Ideally, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to set the meeting now, but as soon as we get closer to a date, that's going to be the next step before we can really move on implementing any of that stuff. We need to have a discussion around it. I don't want you to spin your wheels or to have to do any rework there.
All right, looks like those are all the questions. Let me share what I was doing. Okay, you should be able to see this. Okay, so first of all, I wrote this small tool, just like ToolChain. It's in Node.js. You can basically run it against the endpoint, and it will extract all the authors of all the blocks in the history. It will write down the information about who signed the block, so like what was the identity of the farmer. And it will also write the address where the reward go. That might be different due to recent changes. And it will also write down the number of bytes that the consensus thinks the network has. So we can like plot the chart, let's say over time, how much capacity we have on the network. That is some for like marketing analysis, I guess. Then I was working on this cleanup. The first pull request went in before this week. Then I had quite a few. In the end, we have just one module where we have all of the things that are left from the Polkadot folder. There is no Polkadot folder here anymore. And I can show you, oh, that's not executive, that's, I think, Cirrus Executor. Overseer. It's still called Overseer, it's really not anymore. So basically the idea is that when we create it, we specify the primary chain. That's something we need to call to get some information. Then we have information about leaves, and we will also forward events about what blocks are imported and the time slots. So every time we have a new slot, we need to potentially create a bundle. Every time we have a new block imported, we need to execute it. And there is some additional logic left around like messaging, which you can prune off and integrate into the executor. But this like is basically the whole thing that's left from the Polkadot. And in the end, the API is simpler in the executor itself, because in order to create executor, we already had a bunch of arguments. I just had to add a few, and it will create this instant of the overseer internally. So it's not exposed in any way to anyone. You can just create executor, and it will subscribe to things on the primary chain it cares about. And it will send like execution receipts back again through this primary chain client. So this should be fairly close to actually integrating into the primary chain. And I think it will help the chain. And in general, we have less code to maintain, which is good, I think, hopefully. So that took most of the time, like limited time that I had to actually work on the code. There were some documentation updates here and there to help with audits and other things. The bigger thing that I'll be working on, that I spent some time writing down and discussing with Jeremiah, is how do we actually resolve the farmer's dilemma, which we have on the current testnet. Basic issue is that we have full nodes that are running and storing all of the archival history that ever happened on the blockchain, and that takes space, basically. What we want to have those nodes only store recent blocks, but that is there is some challenge with that, because a farmer can actually start later and potentially request some of those blocks, and they will not be there, so it will not be able to archive those blocks. If it cannot archive those blocks, it cannot plot them. There is basically nothing basically works. So there are some few midterm workarounds we can do to actually make it happen, and then there are some longer term goals how to actually do it the way it's described in the white paper and like had to work properly. So the first step should take about 1 week. We will take the node that we have right now, and when it's running in authority mode, means it tries to produce blocks. So it like has this time slot, it notifies the farmer, it expects the response. In that case, we will actually wait for farmer to consume pieces that are archived by the node. So node will simply refuse to proceed until farmer is connected. And we expect one-to-one mapping between node and farmer, which is the way we like recommend people to set it up. Once that happens, it means that farmer will no longer request the older blocks, So we can actually switch it to the regular mode, which is non-archival mode. And we think that about 10 gigabytes should be plenty for like half a year, just storing a few last blocks, because state is basically negligible. We don't have anything except balances. And we will tweak parameters of the startup somewhat, because the current flag, which is -- validator that enables authority mode, it implies archival node, but we don't actually need that anymore. So we'll change that a little bit. And we will actually still require someone. So first of all, us, Subspace Labs, but also probably like teammates on their home computers and ambassadors to actually run archival nodes. So those who join the network for the first time will be able to sync from those archival nodes. But for normal operation, it will be not necessary. And we hope that will be sustainable. But that will unfortunately make this temporarily impossible to run multiple farmers against the same node, because not all of the pieces will be plotted by farmers. But that is kind of acceptable trade-off for now. The second step would be more interesting, because at that step, we will require piece retrieval and plotting between farmer and substrate node. So what that means is that farmers should be able to retrieve pieces from DSN, and the node will no longer be coupled with the farmer. The node will be just running the regular mode. And theoretically, we can even implement something like light sync, where you can just like query the network of closest peers, and you can figure out what is the latest block is, and you can just sync the headers up until that point and pull the whole state snapshot instead of like running all of the transactions. So that will make our farmers even more lightweight. They will basically turn into light clients, and that will also decrease overhead on the archival nodes potentially, but probably not much, because we don't have really much beyond the block header. And the latest stage will be if someone wants to start the full node or archival node, they will be able to sync from DSN, but that will be like more difficult approach after we have this. So once we implement those two steps, we will have, even like the first step, we will have fairly lightweight node setup. And that will mean that on the desktop application, when user specifies this many gigabytes to allocate to the application, it will be able to deduct this 10 gigabytes, which is plenty going forward, and actually use the rest to plot. So if you have a terabyte, 10 gigabytes is kind of negligible at that scale. And that will be done primarily because we have this challenge that the sync process is actually embedded into the networking of Substrate, and it's not refactored yet, and it's not clear when it will be. And without that, there is really no good way to replace the sync process we have in the node with some custom, like pulling something from DSN. So that's why we'll have to run archival nodes ourselves for a little bit, but we will resolve it sooner or later. Just might take time, and we need to do something about it already. And also, one of the goals of this is to make the sync process faster in general with the headers, but it's kind of like a bonus on top of the farmer dilemma. So this is the plan that we came up with, and this is something I will be focusing on in the time that I have available for coding.
Sorry, I've got a question. Doesn't this kick down the process further down the line for the full node? Because if eventually we're going to have states at some time in the substrate network, how does that translate to? How does that work with this optimization? How much disk space would that have, and would it reintroduce the farmer dilemma when we do have states?
Right.
Because states also grow.
Yeah. So the answer to that is basically no, like asterisk. So we have decoupled execution, which allows us to store most of the state on executors. So the only thing, the only kind of state that farmers will store is balances that they've received as a reward if you don't move it somewhere else, which is still up to discussion. And some like basic stuff like, I don't know, some like headers don't really imply any like state update. So there will be almost nothing stored in the state, and that almost nothing is what farmer will have to store. And since they only store like last, let's say 256 blocks or like 2000 blocks, that's the cap on the amount of space they will use. And there is really no physical way to go beyond that. So we hope that it will not actually be a farmer's dilemma. It will be negligible on any like reasonable amount of space that people will use.
Yeah, so like the different parts of the farmer's dilemma is the storage of the history, which is going to be resolved this week. So before incentivized testnet, the storage of the state, which we will store state the first version of incentivized testnet, but it's going to be small. And then once we have, the single trusted executor, Big Brother, then we can migrate the balances state from the farmer chain, the primary chain, to the secondary chain. And so then we only have this minimal consensus state left, and we're also not doing any compute on the farmer. So by that point, which we're thinking like a month, maybe even sooner, maybe even before incentivized testnet, we could have Big Brother working. We'll see, I guess. Then we'll, mostly it will be resolved, and that is definitely one of our biggest concerns, is making sure that this is resolved before we have 10,000. I mean, we almost have 10,000 users on the network already. Before we have like 100,000 users, we've got to make sure that, I mean, people are already asking, like there's people that have literally pointed out this specific issue in the Discord already and said like, but the white paper says, and here, but this is how it actually looks like, what's going on here?
Yeah, So realistically, the only thing the state will contain is consensus parameters, like solution range, the current difficulty, then the current solved, randomness, which is global, and like versions of that for however many blocks you store. So like 256 times, I don't know, 100 bytes is almost nothing.
Yeah, and the step question mark down at the bottom, that's basically supporting like some other, parachain or relay chain node. Like we're storing up that's going to merge this back into the test net, where we have all these blocks stored in the archival history, and we want to be able to sync some other node. So first we got to be able to sync our chain from our history, which is sort of native, but then we want to be able to use it as an abstract platform for syncing other chains and their history. And that's kind of what that is implying. But that's a key thing from sort of a integrations and ecosystem perspective, and what we're trying to do. And the whole point of the archiving of Polkadot and Kusama, or like a very big purpose of that as well.
Yeah. So once a sync is decoupled from the networking and is actually like swappable, it would be possible to include Subspace library into any relay chain, parachain, solo chain. Just optionally sync from Subspace DSN. So it can be completely decoupled from the regular way of doing it, and then you can just drop down the archival nodes. No one has to store terabytes and terabytes of history and state. Okay, any other questions? We are against time, I think. No, we have half an hour. Any other questions, discussion points? Maybe Sam wants to share something.
Nothing to share on the protocol side for now. Apart from, I think the next big ticket at Substrate builder. So I'll be chasing everyone to fill in their bits of the document.
Sam, do you want to give a quick overview of that for the team? We've got several people who I think this is going to be their first time being at the Substrate Builders presentation, or I can if you'd rather.
So I'm more than happy to. I've spoken to Ivan, and I've spoken to Ivan about it. Ved has been elusive, but I'm catching him tomorrow. But yeah, let me share my screen one second.
Are you still trying to share, Sam? Oh, you're muted.
Hold on. Yeah, I'll try now. Okay, so as all of you probably do know, we are part of the Subspace Builders program. They give us quite a substantial support, and we're required to make quarterly check-ins with them. So this is the presentation format where we discuss what we've done, not both from a technical side, but also community engagement management side and growth strategy side. So what we're going to be focusing on now is reporting what we've done, this milestone, and diving into it. And it's expected that each engineer that's working on this particular bit owns what they're, owns the putting it together and discussing what they're talking about. So this first couple of slides are quite they're quite basic. It assumes that the audience, which will be parity engineers, they understand the substrate and parity quite well, but might not be too familiar with our protocol. So we will take them through the basic, the 10,000 foot view of the platform. Then we look at the deliverables. Now this were based off of milestone 1. We agreed on these deliverables. So I've already started tagging people that I am going to be chasing for different things. So in the plan is to start off with Liu Cheng, talks about the code review. It talks about the coupled execution. This is still dummy text from the previous one, but it's just a header. So for it, we'll have a notion, a user spec. Then what we pay particular attention to is the present, because parity has quite strict guidelines on what they expect to see. So this is an example. This was for initially for consensus. So if you look at it, it has a link to the
We cannot see that you're sharing the tab.
Yeah. Well, everyone has seen the hold on, let me share screen instead then.
Yeah, I think we get the idea. We know where it goes. Sam.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, yeah. So but I would like to share what the testing guide looks like. So let me share screen instead, because they're quite particular about the presentation they wanted. Otherwise, they just won't read it, and it would be a shame to have done such good work and not have some hiccups at the end of it. Let me share my entire screen. Yes. Okay. So view the code, links to the code. Again, this is okay. We need so this is an example of a pull request that clearly talks on implementation details. Everything roll up into one. A testing guide. So again, this what I do like with this is it rolls up the test solution into Docker, but that's what builds the whole binary. We probably don't have to do that because for each library, for whatever we want to test, we'll build a simple self-contained test. And finally, the documentation. So that's why documentation has to be rolled up here. So that's why I like the work Ivan's doing with documentation. That's already preparing for this, but we'll expect to see it for all the other parts. So yeah, Ivan is going to be taking up distributed farming, Surge, Surge really, and yeah, further down. Then I think this is where Jeremiah delivers the organizational points on execution velocity, hiring, how we improving the different growth metrics, any considerations, performance considerations, crypto economics, community building. Then we agree on what we want to do for milestone 3. Milestone 3, agree on milestone 3 deliverables, and yeah, this is background material. So that is the general structure for the Subspace Builders program. I expect that most of our focus will be on the core backend side. So if I allow 20 minutes for, so what I expect is that the whole code review takes about 30 minutes, with 20 to 25, about 15 to 20 minutes focusing on the backend work, and the rest of the time can go through front end and infrastructure. Any questions? No? Okay, good. So yeah, I'd expect like so we have a dry run next Monday, and what a dry run is just like it's like role playing. So we're going to simulate actually presenting it to parity, so that we can nail down the presentation and ensure everything is up to a T. Then we iterate on any deltas throughout the week. Then hopefully, and then we have the follow-up presentation to parity the following Monday.
Great, thank you, Sam.
All right, I think if that's it, then we'll say thank you to our viewers on YouTube, which we'll see next week. See you guys.